Welcome to Stories from New Eden, the podcast where history, myth, and forgotten truths converge among the stars. I'm your host, Zal Arbosa, and here we dive deep into the lost archives, black site reports, and whispered legends of the EVE online universe. From the rise of ancient civilizations to the silent horror of wormhole space, each episode uncovers the hidden narratives that shape New Eden, the truths behind the empires, the lies buried in the ruins, and the echoes left behind by those who vanished. Whether you're a hardened capsuleer or a curious newcomer, this is your gateway to the lore that breathes life into the void. This is Stories from New Eden. Let's begin. Kalen Ishii checked his datapad for the third time that hour. The shipment manifest for the Devon system had been rerouted twice already, and each delay rippled across the supply chain like a shockwave. Ishukane's orbital shipyards were counting on those raw materials, tritanium and pyrite, to meet their next production quota. Failure was not an option. In the cold blue light of the logistics hub on Caldari Prime, Kalen stood tall and composed. Years of training and corporate discipline had taught him that stress was a sign of weakness, one that could endanger the entire operation. His duty was clear: ensure the flow of goods, maintain order, and never allow personal feelings to interfere with the mission. A soft chime alerted him to a message. It was from his supervisor, Akinjuro, a veteran of countless corporate battles. The message was terse but unmistakably urgent. Reassess routes immediately. The Gallente Federation has increased patrols near Nagamanen. Expect interference. Kalen's jaw tightened. The border systems were a constant source of tension, but Ishukane thrived on challenges. This was the crucible where loyalty and merit proved their worth. He activated the secure comm channel and spoke to his team, his voice steady, measured. Adjust shipment schedules to avoid known Gallente patrol paths. Increase drone escorts. Report any anomalies immediately. Remember, our corporation depends on your precision. Our people depend on it. In Caldari culture, every role was a thread woven into the corporate fabric. Kalen knew he was not just moving cargo. He was sustaining the livelihood of thousands, supporting the state's strength, and fulfilling his oath to the corporation and its ideals. Hours slipped by in a blur of coordination and analysis. The rerouted convoy slipped past enemy scanners, a testament to Kalen's meticulous planning and the skill of his team. Each successful delivery bolstered Ishukane's industrial might and tightened the corporate grip on the contested region. Late that evening, Kalen received a data report flagged for review. One of his junior officers had detected suspicious transmissions, encrypted chatter hinting at a possible sabotage attempt targeting their supply depots. Duty called again. Kalen convened a rapid response team, delegating tasks with military precision. Loyalty demanded swift action. Failure could cripple months of effort. Merit meant trusting the sharp eyes of his subordinates, nurturing their growth as part of the greater whole. Within hours, the team traced the source of the transmissions to an unregistered vessel lurking near the Haisara supply hub. Kalen authorized a lockdown and coordinated with security forces to intercept the threat. The operation was a success, an act of subversion neutralized without loss. Later, as the hub returned to normal, Kalen stood by the viewport overlooking the sprawling cityscape of Caldari Prime. The lights of megacorporate towers shimmered like stars, symbols of order and unity in an often chaotic galaxy. He allowed himself a moment's reflection, not of doubt or fear, but of pride. Every shipment delivered, Every threat countered, every decision made was a fulfillment of his duty. His loyalty to Ishukon was unshakable, but it was more than allegiance. It was identity. Through discipline and service, he was part of something greater than himself. His datapad buzzed softly, a message from his mentor, reminding him of a saying he'd come to live by. The corporation is the true family. Serve it well, and you serve your own. Kalen smiled faintly. The path ahead was long, and challenges were many. But as a citizen of the Caldari State and an officer of Ishukuni Corporation, he knew one truth above all, duty above all else. Part 1. The Collapse and the First Colonists. He was just 11 years old at the time. The transformation of grief to rage. What prevented him, barely, from breaching that fine line was the pursuit of the question how instead. Chronicle, unrest and war. When the Eve Gate collapsed around 8061 AD, the fledgling human colonies suddenly found themselves marooned. Among the hardest hit was Caldari Prime, a world still mid-terraform, bought by a Terran megacorporation around 7987 AD and partially made habitable by 8307 AD, but still hostile and resource-poor. Colonists, predominantly from the Severe and Détays bloodlines, found themselves cast into a nightmare. Starvation was common. Medicine and trade had vanished. One chronicle tracks Trevor, an 11-year-old boy, whose grief at losing family crystallized into cultural rage. His internal shift, seeking how, not why, became emblematic of the emerging Caldari psyche. What's striking is how clinical their response became. A black site log from Site KAL354, a subterranean research facility, records. We opened the last cryopod manually. Outside temperatures fluctuate from 273 Kelvin to over 313 Kelvin within hours, but the cargo remains intact. Black site colonist log, Site KAL354. This isn't poetic survival. It's cold, methodical adaptation. These were engineers and researchers, not soldiers or mystics, but their decisions set the template for future Caldari culture. Efficiency, discipline, pragmatism. Without trade or regional governance, survivors formed Shukavar, kin-based communal cells pooling labor and discipline. Parents had their newborns enrolled in corporate-run childcare initiatives early on. According to official law, even simple children's games doubled as intelligence tests, measuring traits essential for survival: intellect, aggression, endurance. As hydroponic domes and surface infrastructure returned, thanks to gradual terraforming, the settlers began to embed their environmental experiences into spiritual belief. They saw cold wind, mountain wind, even heart of the forest, not as gods, but guiding forces, the first whispers of what would become the way of the winds. The cold wind symbolized clear logic and unrelenting challenge. Cold wind is the first of the winds. All other winds look up to him. He welcomed them when they first came to the world and told them the stories of its creation. By the time planetary atmosphere reached surface habitable levels, over centuries, these shared hardships solidified into 4 core values: duty, loyalty, merit, unity. The universe law explains, discipline and loyalty came to the forefront and still shapes Caldari society. People identify as Caldari first, their corporation second, and their bloodline a distant third. Such collective identity was critical. Independence was survival. Individualism faltered. Authority became not oppressive, but essential, even if harsh. As Shukavar federated into larger city-states, Emerging infrastructure, surface farms, orbital mining platforms, allowed the first organized societies to flourish. By 16,262 AD, civilizations began to emerge. By 17,453 AD, these groups united under the Raata Empire. But long before Raata priests or Nosan castes, the essence of Caldari society was born here, in cold solidarity, and the vow that weakness would never define them again. Part 2. The Raata Empire and Cultural Unification. Performance matters. If you are good at what you do, you are rewarded, and if you are not, you are pushed aside to make way for someone who can do your job. In the long centuries after the collapse of the Eve Gate, the settlers of Caldari Prime endured, but survival was not enough. They sought purpose, and they found it in unity. What emerged was not a single nation-state in the classical sense, but a spiritual and cultural synthesis that would shape an entire civilization. It was called the Raata Empire. The Raata Empire was founded not through conquest, but consensus. It formed as scattered clans, rooted in shared struggle and shaped by the planet's harsh climate, sought collective structure. A unifying spiritual doctrine emerged. The way of the winds, a belief system that held each individual had a natural, fated role within the greater whole. To embrace that role was to serve society. To reject it was to invite disorder. The Raata priesthood, known colloquially as interpreters of the winds, were not mystics in robes. They were practical guides, advisors, judges, social regulators. They examined lives and labor, ensuring that individuals were placed where they were most useful, where their talents served collective survival. In this, spirituality was not divorced from governance. It was governance. Civic power was organized into a meritocratic caste system called the Nosan. It was a system that rewarded achievement, competence, and self-discipline. A citizen could rise through action, through demonstration of loyalty and results. One chronicle described this ethic succinctly. It's a utilitarianism that didn't bubble out of some pseudo-intellectualist think tank, but rather bubbled instead out of that black stew that is the Caldari corporate world. Though written in reference to the modern megacorporations, the same ethic can be traced directly to the Raata caste system. There was no room for indulgence. The culture that emerged was one of quiet strength, hierarchical, yet fair in its expectations. Success was never a birthright. It was earned through devotion to the role you were given. Under Raata, a single unified language, Old Raata, became dominant. It was concise, unambiguous, and almost poetic in its sparseness. Language became another tool for unity, designed to clarify thought and eliminate misinterpretation. Much like their society, it was engineered for precision. This unification also transcended tribal and ethnic distinctions. The two dominant Caldari bloodlines, the Sivire and Detes, along with the mountain-dwelling Achura, were not erased but integrated. Under Raata philosophy, ancestry mattered less than service. The individual was measured not by heritage, but by adherence to their function. As one Caldari capsuleer put it, Raata is a spiritual identity that transcends meaningless differences in our corporeal forms and insignias. The Raata Empire endured for centuries. Its cities grew vast and subterranean, designed to weather the brutal storms of Caldari Prime. Its industries expanded into low orbit. Its culture became tightly interwoven with spirituality, labor, and law, one and the same. But even an empire of harmony can stagnate. Over time, the rigid structures that had once enabled survival began to suppress growth. Innovation was filtered through tradition, the way of the winds, once a guiding principle, became dogma. And then came first contact, with the Gallente. The Federation, bursting with individualism and liberalism, stood in sharp contrast to the Raata order. Exposure to new ideas, new technologies, philosophies, freedoms, did not shatter Raata instantly, but it exposed the cracks. The old empire did not fall in flames. It unraveled in silence. Its institutions gradually gave way to something colder, harder, and more efficient. The Raata spiritual caste began to lose relevance as a new power rose from the ashes of order, the megacorporation. This was not a revolution, it was an evolution, and its roots lay squarely in the Raata ethos. Duty above desire, performance over privilege, the whole above the self. Part 3. The rise of the megacorporations. The state is a machine. It is not a family. It is not a church. It is not a nation. It is a mechanism for survival. The Raata Empire did not collapse in fire. It withered, its rigid structures unable to adapt to the shifting realities of a reconnected galaxy. By the time contact with Gallente explorers resumed, the Raata were no longer innovators, but curators of a tradition that could not evolve. What replaced it was colder, sharper, and more effective. In the vacuum left by Raata's slow decline, a new power emerged from within Caldari society, the megacorporation. These entities were not just economic powers. They became the new governing institutions of Caldari civilization. The earliest seeds of this transformation were already present during Raata rule. Many of the empire's castes and ministries had begun functioning like proto-corporate entities, managing logistics, trade, defense, and social organization. When the Raata fell, these administrative networks were simply privatized, transformed into powerful clan-based corporate blocs. And they thrived. In an age where survival still demanded efficiency and discipline, the megacorporation became not only employer, but protector, educator, judiciary, and nation. Loyalty to your corporation replaced loyalty to a king. Citizenship became corporate enrollment. Children were born into the state not through birthright, but through corporate registration. The most powerful of these became the Big Eight. Kassigainen Corporation. The most militant and nationalistic of the eight, Kassigainen embodies the original Caldari ideal: duty, strength, and unbending loyalty. It draws heavily on the legacy of the Raata Empire and enforces a rigid hierarchy. Many of its leaders have military backgrounds, and the corporation is known for its tight discipline and aggressive economic expansion. Kassigainen believes in Caldari supremacy, not through propaganda, but performance. It is often seen as the default face of the Caldari State, especially during wartime. Ishukone Corporation. In stark contrast, Ishukone represents innovation, liberalism, and diplomatic outreach. It was Ishukone that brokered the landmark treaty with the Gallente Federation following the Caldari-Gallente War, and its leadership has often leaned toward peace and free trade. Known for its technological advancement, especially in capsuleer technology, Ishukone is respected across New Eden as a visionary powerhouse, though its progressive streak sometimes puts it at odds with traditionalists. Sukuvesta Corporation. Often underestimated, Sukuvesta is the largest landholder among the megacorps, with deep roots in real estate, agriculture, and terraforming. It presents itself as a quiet, stable force focused on long-term stewardship rather than flashy expansion. But make no mistake, Sukuvesta wields immense influence, especially in the outer worlds, where food and settlement infrastructure are power in their purest form. It also maintains strict social codes, making it one of the more conservative and opaque megacorps. Hayasioda Corporation. A quiet traditionalist, Hayasioda maintains a reputation for cultural preservation and integrity. Once a dominant force before the Gallente conflict, it has never quite regained its former power, but remains deeply respected, particularly among older Caldari citizens and Raata spiritualists. It emphasizes fair labor practices, internal cohesion, and ancestral duty. While less aggressive in expansion, Hayasioda plays a key role in anchoring Caldari values against the tides of modernization. CBD Corporation, Caldari Business Tribunal. CBD is more than just a corporation. It's the regulatory backbone of intercorporate law in the state. It oversees contracts, enforces trade rules, and mediates disputes between the megacorps. While it does engage in commercial enterprise, its real power lies in influence. If the CEP is the boardroom of the state, CBD is the courtroom. Its agents are as feared for their legal authority as any navy is for its missiles. Nugoe Huvi Corporation, NOH. Slick, secretive and media savvy, NOH controls vast swaths of the state's entertainment and public relations apparatus. But beneath the glamour lies a powerful intelligence and black ops wing, making NOH one of the most feared players in internal security. Its Caldari propaganda refined to an art form, and sometimes a weapon. If Kallakiota is the hammer, NOH is the scalpel. Laidai Corporation. The scientific spearhead of the state, Laidai is renowned for its biotech research, cybernetics, and medical innovations. It's also among the most hierarchical and nationalistic of the megacorps, maintaining rigorous internal evaluations and elite-driven promotion. Laidai believes in engineered perfection of people, of systems, of outcomes. It has a strong alliance with Kallakiota, and together, the two form a powerful hardliner axis within the CEP. Wirkomi Corporation. Rooted in Akara philosophy, Wirkomi blends corporate ambition with spiritual restraint. It is perhaps the most enigmatic of the eight, emphasizing ethics, aesthetics, and introspection. Though not as militarized as others, Wirkomi's deep ties to the Achura population and their unique interpretation of the way of the winds give them a distinct voice in Caldari politics. It's a quieter, subtler power, but not a lesser one. Each controlled not just industry, but territory, ideology, and its own paramilitary forces. They maintained private education systems, housing, intelligence agencies, even orbital fleets. These were not simply employers. They were microstates within the greater Caldari state, and in many ways more culturally powerful than the state itself. The chronicle, the Caldari, outlines this shift with chilling precision. The megacorporations essentially replaced the government. They grew to enormous size. Most of the public lives under corporate jurisdiction, not state law. Loyalty is not owed to the state, it is owed to the corporation. This decentralization wasn't seen as a threat, it was embraced. A centralized government was inefficient. The state became a framework, a kind of diplomatic scaffolding to manage intercorporate disputes and represent Caldari interests abroad, especially in negotiations with the Gallente Federation. As the corporations expanded into space, their rivalries followed. Whole star systems were carved into zones of influence. Resource wars were waged not with national militaries, but with corporate strike teams and espionage units. Corporations developed their own branding, internal traditions, and recruitment methods, creating a society where loyalty to your workplace was not optional, but existential. Still, these were not anarchic entities. The Chief Executive Panel, CEP, was formed to mediate conflicts and provide a semblance of unity among the Big Eight. It functioned more like a boardroom than a senate, but its word carried weight. And when war loomed with the Gallente Federation, the CEP took on its most important role, coordinating the Caldari War effort. But before that war could ignite, Caldari identity had already been transformed. The Raata spiritual ethos had been transmuted into corporate loyalty. The way of the winds gave way to mission briefings. What had once been religious caste was now performance rating. And no one represented this transformation more than Tibus Heth, whose rise would later shake the corporate order to its core. But that, perhaps, is a story for another episode. For now, understand this. The Caldari did not reject tradition. They refined it. What was once spiritual unity became corporate alignment. What was once survival through faith became survival through profit. And what began as communal struggle had evolved into a civilization of competition, discipline, and relentless purpose. We serve not gods nor flags, but contracts. We survive because we adapt, and we remember. Internal NOH Training Manual, classified excerpt. Part 4, First Contact and the Caldari Gallente War. In the face of liberty, the Caldari stand firm. Where others see oppression, they see order. Where others see weakness, they see survival. Excerpt from Caldari State Military Archives. After centuries of isolation following the collapse of the Eve Gate, the Caldari State's re-engagement with the wider galaxy led inevitably to friction with the Gallente Federation. This clash was as much about fundamentally opposed ideologies as it was about control of key star systems and vital trade routes. Trade disputes and territorial claims. At the heart of the conflict were contested systems in the Caldari Gallente border regions, especially around the Forge, the Citadel and Black Rise, and notably the Kassigainen system. Kassigainen lies near the Caldari State's periphery and has been a flashpoint due to its strategic position and resource wealth. Both powers sought to control access to critical raw materials like tritanium and pyrite, essential for shipbuilding and industry, as well as advanced manufacturing infrastructure in orbital platforms and starbases. The Caldari megacorp tightly managed these resources to maintain military and economic strength, while the Gallente Federation pushed to expand trade networks and political influence in the area. Classified intelligence recovered from Caldari Black Site Alpha 12 reveals the growing economic pressure. Intercepted Gallente trade manifests indicate increased shipments of advanced AI modules and luxury goods into Lonetrek and Kassigainen. This inflow disrupts Caldari manufacturing efficiency and fuels unrest among industrial workforces. Black Site Alpha 12 Intel Log 1637-5 AD. The preemptive strike and early battles. In 1640-10 AD, Caldari leadership authorized a preemptive strike targeting Gallente-backed facilities and suspected insurgent sympathizers within the Kassigainen system. This operation aimed to reassert Caldari control, deny Gallente expansion, and secure vital industrial infrastructure. The offensive, led by the militant Gallente Corporation with support from LIDAI and intelligence units from NOH and CBD, focused on orbital shipyards and supply depots. A Caldari military scope report summarizes the operation. Operation Iron Vow commenced at 0400 hours. Primary targets included orbital shipyards, supply depots, and insurgent command centers. Within 72 hours, hostile capabilities reduced by 70% with minimal Caldari losses. Objective: secure control over Kassigainen and deter further Gallente encroachment. Caldari Scope Report, Operation Iron Vow, 16,410 AD. The conflict quickly expanded, with intense fighting across the Forge, Lone Trek, and other border systems. One of the most pivotal battles was the Siege of Caldari Prime, where coordinated Caldari megacorporate fleets repelled a Gallente assault on the homeworld's orbital defenses. Leadership and war effort. The war effort unified Caldari corporate fleets in unprecedented ways. Admiral Eden Otokosh, a celebrated Caldari commander, orchestrated the integration of corporate naval forces into a cohesive war machine, blending military discipline with corporate logistical efficiency. Throughout the war, loyalty to one's corporation became synonymous with loyalty to the state, and the megacorps' influence grew in both political and military spheres. War's end and aftermath. After decades of costly and brutal conflict, the Caldari State and Gallente Federation negotiated an armistice. Though no single formal treaty is recorded by name in official law, these agreements establish recognized borders largely favoring Caldari control over the Forge and Lone Trek, formalizing a tenuous peace. Key figures in post-war diplomacy included Tibus Heth, chairman of the Caldari State, emerging as a central figure symbolizing Caldari resilience and unity. Ivar Aken, CEO of Kassigainen Corporation, representing the military-industrial interests of the state, and Solon Hirai, delegate from the CBD Corporation, overseeing legal frameworks. From the Gallente side, it was only President Corinne Medusa who led the Federation's efforts to end the conflict while preserving democratic values. Continuing rivalry. Despite peace, intelligence reports indicate ongoing covert operations. Even in times of declared peace, sabotage, propaganda, and espionage persist in border systems, especially Kassigainen and Lone Trek. The Caldari State remains vigilant against Gallente subversion. Black Site Delta 7, Classified Report, 1665 AD. This uneasy truce set the stage for continued rivalry between the Caldari and Gallente, marked by economic competition, political tension, and periodic skirmishes. Part 5. The Corporate State and Caldari Society. The corporation is the true family. Loyalty to the state is loyalty to the corporation. The individual serves the collective purpose. Excerpt from Caldari State Social Code. After decades of brutal conflict with the Gallente Federation, the Caldari State entered an era of uneasy peace. A peace carefully maintained by the dominant force in every aspect of Caldari life, the megacorporations. Far from simply being economic engines, these corporate giants became the backbone of the Caldari political system, social order, and cultural identity. To understand the Caldari is to understand the megacorporations, their power, their influence, and the lives they shape. The Caldari State is unlike any traditional nation or empire. It is, at its core, a corporate federation, a loose confederation of powerful megacorporations that wield sovereign authority over vast swathes of territory, population, and economic output. Instead of a centralized monarchy or democracy, governance is conducted through a body known as the Chief Executive Panel, CEP, which functions as the ruling council. This panel is composed of the CEOs from the Big 8 megacorporations who set broad policy, mediate disputes, and coordinate defense and diplomacy. The CEP is not a government in the classical sense. It is a corporate boardroom with the fate of millions resting on decisions made behind thick glass walls in high-rise towers on Caldari Prime and beyond. Each CEO brings their corporation's interests, philosophies, and ambitions into the room, competing, cooperating, and negotiating in a delicate balance of power. This system is efficient but also fragile. While it fosters economic dynamism and military discipline, it sometimes struggles to reconcile competing corporate interests or address the needs of individuals who find themselves caught between factions. In the Caldari State, citizenship is synonymous with corporate membership. At birth, every individual is registered under a specific corporation, often reflecting their family's historical ties, geographic location, or economic function. This corporate registration is more than just bureaucratic. It defines every aspect of one's identity, from education and employment to social standing and legal status. Schools operate as corporate training centers, instilling young Caldari with the skills and values required to serve their employer, and, by extension, the state. The curriculum emphasizes discipline, loyalty, and efficiency, ensuring that citizens understand their role as parts of a larger machine. Children are taught early that the corporation is their true family. Personal ambition is encouraged only insofar as it benefits the collective. The way of the winds, a spiritual philosophy inherited from Raata traditions, has been adapted to support this corporate worldview, teaching that harmony arises from discipline, service, and unity, rather than individualism. The Caldari social order rests on 4 core values that permeate all aspects of life. Duty. Every citizen has a role to fulfill, whether on the factory floor, in a starship cockpit, or behind a desk. Fulfilling this duty without hesitation or complaint is a sacred responsibility. Loyalty. Loyalty to one's corporation and to the state is paramount. Betrayal or subversion are among the most heinous crimes. Merit. Advancement and respect are earned through performance and contribution, not birthright. The Caldari believe in rewarding competence and dedication. Unity. Despite fierce corporate competition, Caldari society emphasizes cohesion and collective strength. Internal rivalry is managed so as not to threaten overall stability. These values create a society that prizes order and discipline, but also fosters a sense of purpose and belonging. In Caldari culture, individual desires are subordinated to the corporate mission, but this is not seen as oppression. Instead, it is understood as the path to survival and prosperity. Corporate influence extends deep into daily life. Housing, healthcare, and welfare services are often provided or heavily regulated by the megacorps, ensuring that citizens remain dependent on and loyal to their corporate sponsors. Social programs are designed to maintain workforce productivity and morale, with strict controls on dissent and disorder. Entertainment and media are similarly controlled. The NOH, Nugoi Huvi Corporation, specializes in propaganda and cultural production, crafting narratives that glorify corporate loyalty, the sacrifices of war, and the virtues of discipline. Television dramas, music, and public ceremonies celebrate mega-corporate heroes, successful corporate projects, and the state's enduring strength. Work itself is seen as an honorable contribution to the greater good. The Caldari take pride in their industrial might and technological innovation. The shipyards, factories, and research labs are not just places of labor. They are temples of progress. Success is measured not only in profit, but in how well individuals and teams fulfill their corporate roles. Each of the Big 8 megacorporations maintains a distinct identity and culture, reflecting their history, economic focus, and philosophical outlook. These identities foster intense internal loyalty and healthy rivalry that drives innovation and excellence. Gallente Corporation emphasizes militarism and discipline, shaping a culture of strength and duty. Kassigainen Corporation values innovation and diplomacy, fostering progressive technological development. Raata Corporation focuses on stability and stewardship, maintaining agricultural and real estate holdings. Gallente Corporation is known for preserving tradition and fair labor practices. CBD Corporation governs legal affairs, embodying order and regulation. Nugoihuvi, NOH, masters propaganda and intelligence. Caldari Corporation pushes scientific and biotech boundaries. Raata Corporation blends corporate ambition with spiritual reflection. This diversity enriches Caldari society, but also means the megacorps constantly vie for influence on the CEP and in the broader state. Corporate espionage, political maneuvering, and economic competition are everyday realities, even as cooperation is necessary to maintain stability. The Caldari State maintains strict enforcement mechanisms to uphold order. Security forces and intelligence agencies, often corporate-run, monitor for subversion or dissent. Offenders face severe penalties, including forced re-education, exile, or imprisonment. Yet despite the authoritarian nature of corporate rule, outright rebellion is rare. Most Caldari accept the system because it is proven to work, offering security, purpose, and prosperity in a harsh and dangerous galaxy. The state's survival depends on unity and discipline, and the population has internalized this truth. Capsuleers, elite pilots capable of surviving the destruction of their ships by transferring consciousness between cloning facilities, are unique in Caldari society. Typically sponsored by a megacorporation, capsuleers represent the pinnacle of corporate ambition and military power. They act as both warriors and symbols, embodying corporate ideals of efficiency, loyalty, and resilience. Their freedom to operate across New Eden makes them invaluable assets and potent propaganda tools. The Caldari State is a society built not on blood or land, but on contracts, loyalty, and corporate allegiance. The megacorporations are more than employers. They are the architects of identity, culture, and governance. Through discipline, unity, and a shared sense of purpose, the Caldari have built a civilization that endures and thrives amid the chaos of New Eden. Understanding this corporate state is essential to understanding the Caldari people themselves, their strengths, their struggles, and the relentless drive that defines them. As we bring this deep exploration of the Caldari faction to a close, it's important to reflect on the remarkable journey of a people forged through hardship, shaped by conflict, and united under the banner of corporate power and unwavering discipline. The Caldari are far more than just a faction defined by star systems or political borders. They are a civilization born from survival and transformation, one that defies traditional notions of nationhood and identity. Their story begins long ago, rooted in the legacy of the Raata Empire, an advanced and spiritual civilization that prized meritocracy and order. When the empire collapsed in the chaos following the destruction of the Eve Gate, the early Caldari colonists found themselves isolated and vulnerable. It was their resilience, guided by the ancient philosophy known as the Way of the Winds, a belief in harmony through discipline and service, that carried them through these dark times. Unlike many others who sought to rebuild monarchies or empires, the Caldari forged a new path, creating a society governed not by kings or elected officials, but by powerful megacorporations. These corporations, each sovereign in their own right, banded together to form a federation unlike any other, blending tradition with innovation, hierarchy with meritocracy. When contact with the wider galaxy resumed, this unique society clashed violently with the Gallente Federation, whose values of democracy and individual freedom stood in stark contrast to the Caldari's collectivist corporate order. The resulting war was as much a battle of ideologies as it was of fleets and firepower. Control over strategically vital border systems, such as Kassigainen, the Forge, and Lone Trek, became the prize in a conflict driven by the need to secure resources critical for industry and survival. The Caldari megacorp marshaled their forces, setting aside rivalries to defend their sovereignty with relentless determination. Leaders like Admiral Eden Otakosh became legends, uniting corporate fleets into an effective war machine that repelled Gallente advances and ensured the survival of the Caldari State. Though no Grand Peace Treaty is recorded by name, the war eventually ended with a hard-won armistice that drew recognized borders and established a tense peace. The conflict left deep scars that continue to influence Caldari politics and culture, fueling vigilance and a readiness to defend their way of life. Yet, the defining feature of the Caldari is not only their past conflicts, but their distinctive system of governance. Rather than a centralized government, the Caldari State is ruled by the CEOs of its great megacorporations, who gather in the chief executive panel to set policy and steer the state's future. These corporate leaders wield immense power, governing economies, militaries, and social order with a pragmatic efficiency few other civilizations can match. This system permeates every facet of Caldari life. From the moment they are born, Caldari citizens are assigned corporate citizenship, a status that shapes their education, career, and social identity. Loyalty to one's corporation transcends family or tribe, forging a society where personal ambition is meaningful only as a contribution to the collective good. Each megacorporation embodies its own culture and philosophy, whether it's Kalakiota's militant discipline, Ishukon's innovation and diplomacy, or Nugehuvi's mastery of propaganda and intelligence. These corporations compete fiercely, yet coexist within the state's fragile balance of power, driving technological advancement, economic growth, and political intrigue. The social fabric of the Caldari is woven with the values of duty, loyalty, merit, and unity. Every citizen is expected to fulfill their role with unwavering commitment, advancing through merit and contributing to a cohesive whole. This disciplined order may appear rigid to outsiders, but for the Caldari, it is a source of pride and strength that has ensured their survival in a harsh and unpredictable universe. Daily life reflects this corporate dominance. Housing, healthcare, education, and social services are often provided or tightly regulated by corporations, binding citizens to their corporate sponsors. Entertainment and media reinforce the narrative of corporate loyalty and collective sacrifice, ensuring that the corporate state's ideals permeate even culture and spirituality. Work is not merely a means of survival, but a sacred duty, a vital contribution to the state's prosperity. At the pinnacle of Caldari society stand the capsuleers, elite pilots whose near immortality through cloning and neural interface technology makes them symbols of corporate ambition and military might. Sponsored by Megacorp, capsuleers embody the Caldari ideals of discipline, loyalty, and strategic excellence, acting as both warriors and ambassadors across New Eden. Today, the Caldari State remains a dominant force, a society where the individual is defined by their role in the collective, where corporate power equals governance, and where order and discipline are the pillars of existence. The tensions and rivalries within the corporate federation, the ever-present threat of conflict with rival factions, and the relentless push for innovation ensure that the Caldari continue to adapt and endure. To understand the Caldari is to appreciate a civilization unlike any other, one where loyalty to corporation and state supersedes all else, where personal freedom is channeled into service to the collective, and where survival depends on unity, discipline, and strength. Their legacy is a testament to the power of order in chaos, the resilience born of hardship, and the complex beauty of a society built on contracts rather than blood. In the sprawling universe of New Eden, the Caldari stand as a formidable and enigmatic presence, a people whose corporate creed shapes every aspect of their lives, and whose story is far from over. Join us next time as we turn our gaze toward the rugged worlds of the Minmatar, a proud and resilient people whose history is marked by struggle, rebellion, and an unyielding will to reclaim their freedom. We'll delve deep into their ancient origins, the hardships they endured under occupation, and the fierce spirit that has shaped their culture, politics, and identity. Prepare to discover the untold stories behind the formation of the Minmatar Republic and the indomitable heart of a people who refuse to be broken. You've been listening to Stories from New Eden, where the past isn't dead, only buried. If you enjoyed this journey through lost empires, fractured truths, and the shadows of the cluster, be sure to follow and share the podcast. Every transmission helps others find their way through the dark. New episodes drop every week, uncovering deeper layers of Eve's hidden history. From erased black-site logs to the forbidden lore that empires try to silence. Until next time, fly safe, keep your senses sharp, and remember, in New Eden, something is always watching.